So thank you for coming. I'm Alexandra with the Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center, and we are here in Central Florida. We are also the Central Florida Brain Bank. We cover 21 counties for the state of Florida regarding the Brain Bank. Also, we have a free library. We do care coaching. We have workshops pertaining to dementia, and everything we do is free of charge. We have partners in the community, such as JC, to help educate everybody sur certain issues. And going from there, JC, if you could introduce yourself, tell us who you are, how long you have been doing this business, and we're going to start. Thank you.
So I own an audiology practice in Altamont Springs, Florida. We're in Central Florida. And my name is JC Soto. I am a nationally board certified hearing instrument specialist. I help people hear, and I've been dispensing hearing aids and helping people hear for the last decade. And it's been a great thing. I love what I get to do every day. It's a really beautiful and rewarding field. If you guys know anyone that's having difficulty hearing today, I'm going to talk about hearing loss and how that links to cognitive decline. But hopefully you guys that leave today inspired or with questions about, hey, I have this friend or I have this family who's not hearing as well, and kind of seeing how impactful not hearing is, and the innovations and the things that are out there today with technology that are making it more accessible and just normalizing hearing aids and better hearing. Because it's been a stigma in my experience through the years. There's been just a lot of people, there's a lot of apprehension behind having a hearing evaluation, connecting that with aging, wearing a hearing aid. They used to be really big and ugly and bulky and squeal, and changing batteries and all these things. And the technology has it's evolved so much that it's really become a no big deal thing now, in my opinion. And I know not everyone shares that, but because of how much headphone use, AirPods, and all these things that we're seeing today that's kind of normalized, so many people wear headphones. It's really just another one of that, just meeting the person's prescriptive targets. And so it's helping them hear, helping their brain, but also a small little thing. So I'm not going to go too deep on hearing aids, but if you guys do have questions, I'd be happy to answer and educate you guys as much as I can. All righty. So a little bit about me. So as I mentioned, I am the owner of Altamont Family Hearing. We are an audiology practice here in Altamont Springs. We're in Central Florida. And here's just a few pictures of me and my family. I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor here. My staff, we have a lot of fun. We really love what we get to do every day, and just helping people hear their best. I do a lot of educational seminars. We're in One Senior Place. For those that are local, it's an amazing resource center for everything aging. And in this building, we do a lot of conversations about just subjects around aging and hearing loss. And aging do go hand in hand, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. About us also, we opened 5 years ago, and I've been doing this for 10 years. And I've been a provider for 10 years. And 5 years ago is that I opened my own practice. And in 2023, we won a local award for Orlando's best audiology practice. In 24, I was nominated, but I did not win. But we're working on it for 2025, and hopefully we win it again. My career began in 2013. It was in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm originally from New York, and then moved from New York to Miami, and then from Miami, West Palm. And then now I came up to Central Florida with one of the companies I was working for at the time, and just wanted a change of pace. And I fell in love with this here. I have 2 little girls. We're close to Mickey Mouse and Disney, and that's what we're living and breathing in the stage of my life right now. And this has been such a great medium between, city feeling and access to a lot of things, but a nice suburb area. If you guys are not in Central Florida, I don't know if we have a Central Florida group or people nationwide, but come on down. It's really, really, really fun. So a little bit about hearing loss. So we're going to get to how hearing loss is connected to cognitive health. but I really do want to talk about hearing loss first. One of my slogan for the business is delivering the sound of life. And what that means to me, and it's different for everyone, is hearing is access to communication. It's family. Family is the biggest thing in my entire life right now. It's your friends. It's whatever is impactful for you as an individual. For some people, it may not be being around a big family, or maybe they didn't grow up with that. Maybe it's a musician who loves the strings of his guitar. Maybe it's going to concerts, going to a cruise, being, just being around people. Whatever that is, whatever it is that moves you, when you are missing that, it can be really impactful in different ways. And there's this quote here: most people that come to me, it's usually because they're noticing something within their families or misunderstanding their families. And that's an easy trigger because the family notices it too. This quote by Helen Keller, it says, hearing loss separates us from people and the things that we love. She wrote, blindness separates people from things, but deafness separates people from people. And I think that's really impactful. And that just really just goes back to what I mentioned just now. When you're not effectively able to communicate with your family, or you don't feel confident in the things that you're hearing and processing what you're hearing, it could really take a toll on those relationships and just overall our health overall. Here I'm going to talk about some signs, and I'm going to ask for some participation. If anyone's brave enough to come on the microphone. A little bit about hearing loss is over 1.5 billion people, 20% of the world population that live with hearing loss. It's been estimated over 48 million Americans that have difficulty hearing. And unfortunately, worldwide, the adoption rate of hearing aids, it's only between 28 and 30%, even in countries where their healthcare system fully covers them. It's something that it takes us a long time to identify and treat, for the person to admit that they're having difficulty and to ask for that help. Technology's advanced, things are easier now, but as a society, we're a little bit behind on getting help for this. Where like glasses, which used to be, ridiculed back in the day, you'd get made fun of. This is like a normal thing now. When people get different glasses and stylish glasses and all these other things, the stigma for glasses is, in my opinion, it's pretty much out the window now for most people. But I want to ask you guys, for those that are brave, to come on the microphone and help me. What are some signs that you guys see in your loved ones or friends that have difficulty hearing? What are some symptoms, and what does that sound like or look like? Can anyone help me identify what a person with hearing loss could look or sound like?
Maybe uninterested in a conversation because they're not able to participate as well.
Yeah, uninterested. So that's a big one. Maybe some like nod, or just getting by, like nodding and smiling and not really engaging with you, kind of just letting the conversation go. I love that one. Anyone else? Thank you for jumping on the mic.
I find that frustration for not being able to participate in the conversation or missing parts of it.
Frustration, yeah, feeling like you're left out. Someone else was jumping on too.
I was saying, my clients that are hard of hearing tend to look confused. Like they're actively watching you speak, but they're still looking confused.
Mm-hmm. And there's two sides to that road. It could be inability to hear altogether, and there's also auditory processing, which is tied, but that's more on the cognitive health side. But there are people that are, trying to keep up and trying to get by, and it's just frustrating. Going back to the frustration, but they're just almost like a step behind the conversation, and then you got to give them a minute to process it. And hearing aids can certainly help with that sort of thing, and I'm going to talk about that now. Anyone else? Any other inputs for some symptoms for hearing loss?
Sometimes
Well, I
you
was there.
ask them a question and then they will answer something totally different.
Yeah, that's a big one. Very common. And those things, from answering completely, where it looks like it's completely incoherent, or having to catch up. If we look from the outside in, if there hasn't been a diagnosis of any cognitive impairment, that's some of the things that we think of, like, hey, mom or dad are they're a little bit behind. I'm using mom or dad here as an example, but cognition is usually the first thing we would think of. They're like, why aren't they following? Unless there are other things, like when you speak up, they do understand more. Another big one is the TV. So, and that's a big sign. TV, cell phone, but TV's a little bit more of a red flag. And that's, if you guys are walking in and the TV's at 80 and you like it at 15, let's say mom or dad in this example, or grandma, grandpa, and the TV is so loud that it's uncomfortable for you, that should be an immediate sign of, why are we needing it so loud? I would recommend for you, their loved one that's identifying it, to put it down to the level that you find comfortable, and then saying, hey, this is about where it should be. This is also assuming that the person saying that has normal hearing, but this is about where it should be comfortable. If you're having to turn this up, that's a good segue to say, have you had your hearing evaluated? I'm going to move forward with some of these, but some of the ones that we mentioned is not really understanding, and it's right here. People seem to mumble. It's a common complaint that we see when patients come in looking to hear better. They'll say, my wife mumbles, or my son mumbles, and this person mumbles. And then I usually say there are people out there that do mumble. I interact with them too, but when everyone seems like they're mumbling, or majority of the people, that's where we got to start kind of pointing it back at ourselves. Like, well, maybe it's not everyone. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Maybe there's more to the story. A big one is this one right here, which it's hard to follow conversations in meetings and restaurants. Restaurants is a nightmare for people that have hearing loss, because they can say, like, I'm hearing the whole room and I can't hear my wife in front of me, or I can't hear my daughter in front of me. And even people with hearing aids, most hearing aid wearers, this is the number one area that they are requesting for improvement in technology, and where technology and things like artificial intelligence, AI, are helping to try to bring down the noise so that the person can just focus on who's in front of them, so that they can better understand and not have to process out the noise. Because there are people that have the ability to hear, like, the speech babble in the room, the noise, but they don't have the distinction and the clarity to hear what's in front of them. And there does come a point that the person's like, you know what, I'm just not going to go to Cheesecake Factory anymore, or I'm not going to go to, if you're local here in Altamont, I'm not going to go to Cafe Murano's. They have a great band and great music, but I can't understand anyone. Why would I go there? I'm not going to go to the birthday party. And that's a big fear, because another part of the cognitive health overall is that we want the person to be interacting with their friends, family, speaking. If you don't use it, you lose it, and that applies in so many areas of healthcare. But if the person starts to abstain from social environments, they can isolate, and that leads to depression as well, which is a huge thing that we see. It's a comorbidity of hearing loss, is not just and they go hand in hand, not just the cognitive health decline, but also they're not interacting. They're staying home and watching TV and not doing these things because they don't feel confident in those scenarios. And that's pretty much what I'm talking about here. You start to limit your activity. So if you have a friend, family, a loved one that is starting to do these things and kind of getting grumpy too, where they're a little bit more irritable, or just you sense more of a negative energy from them when it comes to, especially with family gatherings and events, there could be more to the story. That person they didn't wake up grumpy one day. They can, over time start to really feel frustrated and feel like, well, what's the point of this, or what's the point of that if I'm not having a good time, or if I'm not socializing? But they may not be able to identify what that issue is on their own. It does take, a majority of the time, when we see this a little bit more with our guys, man, I'm sorry, I'm on your team, I'm on this team, but we can be a little bit more challenging and stubborn when it comes to making healthcare decisions. And normally with our guys, we see that it takes a little bit more of a push from the spouse or family to say, you are missing out. And why? Like, there is no reason in 2025, with the innovations that there's an answer for so many things. If there is something that can better your quality of life overall, whether hearing aids or anything, going to the gym, taking care of your health overall. It's something we want to do. It's a quality of life. Life is worth living and living happily. A big one, speaking of the spouses, so this is what I just mentioned. 98% of spouses were negatively affected by their partner's hearing. That is the first line of irritability, I would say, with hearing loss. It's not you. Actually, it's almost always not the patient that's noticing their loss. It is just about always the people around them that start to pick up on, like, yeah, I've had to, dad or mom or dad keep asking to repeat. The TB example that I said too, but all these other signs, they're the ones that will pick up, and they're the ones that might kind of feel like they're nagging and pushing and saying, you're really not, what are we going to do about this? And to the person, they'll be like, oh, I'm fine. I don't feel anything. I didn't wake up with sudden hearing loss. I'm doing fine. Their perception of their hearing is they're doing fine, while the other person is getting tired of repeating themselves. The other thing here is, most people will say, I hear you, but I can't understand you. So this is very, very common. Just like the restaurant scenario that I said, you're hearing all this other noise that you don't want to. You don't have the clarity to distinguish the person in front of you. I'm going to show you in a little bit why that's really, really common to hear. If anyone's had a hearing evaluation, it's this guy right here, high frequencies. I'll show you what that means, but that's what gives us speech understanding, and that's one of the first things that we lose when there is hearing loss. When we're doing a hearing evaluation, we're looking in the ear canal, we're seeing that eardrum, making sure it's healthy, and it's showing how sound goes from that drum to the middle ear bones, and then to ultimately the cochlea, which is our auditory nerve. And that's what sends a signal to the brain. The brain is the most important part in hearing. That is, our ears, all they do is collect sound. The brain has to decode, is that a person talking? Is that a dog barking? Is this, the noise in the restaurant? And what happens is when people have a nerve loss, and it's the most common type of hearing loss that we see, it's called sensory neural. And this means the nerves are coming down, whether because we're getting a little bit older, whether because we were shooting guns in the military without ear protection, and that's gotten better over the years. But if we've had a veteran that's been doing that, or, a lot of concerts, construction workers without ear protection, all these things will attribute to some degree of nerve loss as we age. And sometimes it's not even as we age, it can happen in just one impact. I've had, unfortunately, a lot of young adults that one incident, whether it's, shooting a gun without protection, that one incident can cause them permanent hearing loss. Not fully in all cases, but a degree of hearing loss where then they do need assistance. Just like if I have vision loss and I put this on and now I can see, that person would need hearing aids, assuming that their nerve is what's affected. The hearing aid is what would amplify and give them what they're missing. Another big one that can happen is some ototoxic medication. I wouldn't say this is a common one, but there are incidents of, the person having the flu or having an antibiotic, and then that led to a sudden hearing loss. But I would say this is not the most common thing that we see, especially with our aging population, because many times it's just aging, and it is very common. I wouldn't say it's normal, because a lot of times people will ask, what is normal for 60, 70, 80? Like, what is a normal hearing loss? I'm going to show you guys what normal is on this graph. And I'm not going to get too technical and boring. Don't worry, guys. It's just a quick overview. But if you've had a hearing test or go to have a hearing evaluation, this number 20 that I have my mouse over, 20 and above is a normal hearing threshold, whether the person's 8 years old or 80 years old. This is what we want to see. As we start coming down this graph in the hearing evaluation, that's how we know how much hearing loss there is. So as we go down, we see moderate, severe, profound. And in a hearing evaluation, we're objectively seeing, well, what's this person hearing? This graph in this example, the person is above normal in the lows, and they're high. So I'm sorry, this is low frequency on the left. And as we go to the right, it gets higher pitch. Think of a piano. I always say if you start to the left, you hear the low key. As you go to the right, it's getting higher. In a hearing evaluation, we're using the same frequencies that we would see in music composition, or even in your car radio, or the old school amplifiers that used to be able to take every single gain handle and turn them up and down. It's essentially what we're looking at in a test is, at every frequency, how much power does that person need to hear the sound effectively. Once we know that, that's how we know what they're missing. In this case, they're missing their highs, and those highs is why the speech would not be clear in the restaurant. The speech babble, like the cafeteria noise, the culmination of all that sound, normally is around 250 to 500. It's in the lows. In this person's example, they hear that part that they don't want to hear, but then their spouse, which women generally are a little higher pitched than men, their spouse could be somewhere in this area, and they're hearing all the way down here. So they're missing, they might be hearing parts of it, but they're missing a good chunk of the conversation. And when they're missing it, that means they're working harder to understand. And that's the link then between our auditory system and our brain. It's if that person is working harder, there is a strain on the brain. It's called cerebral atrophy. They are working harder. It's a cognitive load for them to do what someone with normal hearing is doing effortlessly, because they are having to really zero in, look at lip reading, looking at nonverbal cues. And it can feel exhausting. And there are people that when they have a hearing loss and they go to a noisy restaurant, they can feel after the meal or after the event, they can feel like they just went on an exercise session, because it is exhausting for the brain to try to keep up, which is why it's easy for people to say, I'm just not going there. You know what, honey, you go ahead and enjoy it. I'm going to stay back and watch the game or stay, that the reason it's easy to isolate and stop participating is it's not fun to be somewhere straining to get by. Over the years, we've had a lot of studies that are linking the two. What we're seeing is the more severe the person's hearing loss is, the higher the risk of developing dementia, because the brain is tired and it's working harder. So, and it's not to say that everyone with a hearing loss is going to have dementia. That's not what I'm saying here. But for people that do have cognitive decline in their family and they also have a hearing loss, all these studies that I'm going to show you a little bit of here, all these studies are pointing to, hey, there is a significant correlation between these two. And this is why we've partnered with ADRC, and we have other research companies that are in Central Florida, where if I'm noticing that someone's having difficulty hearing and difficulty processing, my recommendation is, hey, we want to have a memory screening. We want to take a look at just overall, how is their cognitive health? Because we know we can help someone to a degree hear better. That does not necessarily mean that they have the tools to understand what they've been missing. Johns Hopkins research, they were one of the first that came out and showed the link between the hearing loss and dementia. And there have been several publications by different universities, different manufacturers as well of hearing aids, just showing that declines in hearing abilities may accelerate gray matter atrophy and increase the listening effort necessary to comprehend speech, which is what I'm talking about here. You're working harder to do something that should be effortless.
Like you were just saying, when you see that, they know they can go to either a research company or go to a geriatrician so they can have a test done to make sure that it's indeed some form of dementia that is developing. So they can do those tests free of charge for them in research companies, or if they have insurance, they can go to their geriatrician or their neurologist, etc. So that's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And we try to do that here in the office when we're seeing those signs. Is I even have like brochures and pamphlets and saying, hey, like these are the resources in our area. Go get tested, get screened, see what's going on. Like the more you know. And I know that for some people, this can be a scary subject in starting the conversation. But if we are seeing these signs socially, or we're seeing these signs objectively in tests like the hearing evaluation, then, as providers, it's our job to inform them. But a lot of people just don't know that they have access to these things. And so thank you, Alexandra, for jumping on. If you have a friend or family that's having difficulty, you're seeing those signs, whether you're in Central Florida or not, there are resources, and you do want to, at the very least, reach out to your primary care physician, and that way they can connect you to where you need to go. Or there are research companies usually that we can find to assist in beginning that conversation and having the memory screening. A little more on the how hearing aids are helping is a hearing aid is the hearing loss that I showed you guys in the example a little earlier. That is a person's prescription. That's their prescriptive loss, and a prescription hearing aid can objectively fill that loss, meaning it's going to give them exactly what they are missing as far as the volume, the amplification where they need it. So once you're getting that, that means, oh, this person's voice is coming in clearer. I don't have to strain. And those things are showing that people that are aided, they have a slower decline. And some of the more recent studies have shown study groups, actually, it's in this slide, hearing aid users had a slowdown of cognitive decline over the research study that was not aided. So cognition was stable, and it also opens up other doors, because if that person is now confident in their hearing, they're more likely to go to that birthday party, go to that restaurant, and go. I mean, this is a full circle conversation, is the person that is empowered and confident in their communication, they're going to want to do more of those things. And the person that doesn't, those are the ones that isolate. And that would just overall lead to a faster decline, not only with their cognitive health, but health overall. Like people need people. And I would say most people need people. And those relationships are very important. Being active, participating with your friends and family, it's the most important thing just to preserving your life. You want to go out for that walk. You want to go out to those events. So if you know anyone that's having difficulty doing those things, there are options. I'm showing you some of them here. If it's hearing loss related, it's hard to scale the size of these things here. Actually, in a moment, whenever I get out of the presentation, I'll put a hearing aid on so you guys can see. They're tiny. They're invisible now. And I know that for some family members, there could be objection of, they used to be big and bulky, and changing the batteries, they squealed. And it was just a thing that no one wanted. I will still say no one comes into my office wanting a hearing aid, but they're wanting an improvement in their social life. And once we identify, hey, there's a hearing loss, and it is the solution. It is the glasses for your ears. That's a sort of analogy that I try to link together. But there's different shapes, sizes, and things for everyone. It's just one of those things that are so discreet. So I'm actually going to put one on, and I am bald. There is no way I can hide this thing. And it's just to show you how discreet this can be. So right now I am wearing a behind the ear style. Let me get that in there. And I don't know if you can see, I'm actually purposely going to show it to the camera here.
Yeah, we can see.
And if you see me face on, I'll actually even rotate this way. It is so discreet. For women, this is even easier because you guys have hair to hide it. For guys, it could be a little bit more challenging sometimes if you're looking for discretion, but even then, I'll show you this. And this is I'm not showing you guys these things to come and see me and get hearing aids. I'm saying so that if you have that friend or family that's having difficulty, show them, like, I saw this video and I saw these tiny little hearing aids. Look how small that is. And I would make this a sort of no big deal conversation as far as getting the hearing aids. I'm not saying they're cognitive health or hearing loss, but there are solutions. And so many people don't know that it's as easy as going to someone, putting one of these things in, and getting help. I'm going to talk about another little thing without going too deep, which is a big question that I get, which is, how much do those little things cost? So it's a common question, because I'm saying it's easy to put them in, but how do you pay for them to get them in? Hearing aids are pricey. The Medicare does not cover hearing aids. Many Medicare Advantage plans do have coverage towards them. So I would say majority have hearing aids unless the person has Medicare and Medicaid. But a lot of the plans will have coverages where hearing aids could be like $1,000 or $1,500 out of pocket. If the person has Medicare and Medicaid, just about every program that I've seen fully covers hearing aids. And there are other resources. There's foundations and places that can assist if the person's still in the workplace and needs help. There's so many organizations that can assist in getting hearing aids if the person cannot afford them. I won't go too much deeper in pricing, but it's just to let you know that there are resources out there, just like we're talking with the memory screenings. It's starting the conversation and then going from there and seeing what's available.
So if they need to go to a doctor and they notice that they have hearing loss or the family knows, what type of questions do you suggest they need to write down so they can see or they don't forget to ask? What type of questions are very important?
If they're coming to someone, I want to clarify that I get the question. If they're coming to someone like me for an evaluation or their medical doctor.
Well, to you or their medical doctor, doesn't
Okay.
matter.
If you're going to your medical doctor, just for clarification, also, I am not a medical doctor. I am a licensed hearing aid specialist and I specialize in helping people hear. If you're going to your medical doctor with mom or dad or yourself and you're noticing hearing loss, mention that you want a hearing evaluation. Medicare guidelines requires them to at least do a screening. I will tell you in my experience, that is not the most effective way. They should do, because normally sometimes it just looks like this. Like the doctor will come in and go, "Can you hear me?" "Okay, you passed." No, and it's doctors are busy. They see a lot of patients in the day, and you have to go to someone that specializes in that. They can get you to someone in your area. If you are so red flags that you want to mention, you definitely want to mention and keep in mind is if you have sudden hearing loss, if you have woken up and out of nowhere one of your ears is not working, you're not hearing effectively, there's a need for urgent medical intervention. So you either get to your primary, get to an emergency room. Ideally, you would see an ear, nose, and throat specialist. Shooting pain in your ear that's sudden. If all of a sudden you wake up and there's a loud ringing in your ears, I'll get into ringing in a little bit. Those are medical concerns. Those are things you want to express to your doctor because hearing loss, everything that I've spoken about today, a majority, especially with a sensory neural hearing loss, a majority of them are gradual progressions. It's as we're aging little by little, it's declining. Now, like the example that I said, there could be that one gunshot, that one concert, that one event that causes a nerve loss. Even in that example, you want to go to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. So those are the things to voice. But overall, if we're just noticing the symptoms that we spoke about earlier, which are misunderstanding, asking to repeat, the TV's going up, ask your doctor, "Hey, I think there's something going on with our hearing," and they can connect the dots to an audiology practice in your area. Most practices, if you call them directly, though, they will have either a complimentary hearing evaluation the way that I do, or it's not a significant amount to have a complete hearing evaluation. The insurance is the only reason why I'd want you to ask your doctor first, because some plans do require referral, some don't. Do we have any questions? I know I've spoken about a whole lot. Thank you guys for your patience. Do we have any questions about hearing healthcare, hearing aids?
So, when they come, if something happens with their hearing aid and it needs to be repaired, what do they do? Do they have to have coverage on their hearing aids, or they
That's
they
a
have
good
some
question.
guarantee?
So, excellent question. I love this question. Thank you. Repairs, just about all prescription hearing aids come with a manufacturer's warranty. Usually it's 3 years. So from the day that you purchase or acquire through insurance, you would have 3 years that if it's just stopped working, if it's not charging, if all of a sudden no sound is coming out of it, you do go back to the provider that you got them from. And just about always there's a solution. Either it can be repaired, and usually, like in my practice, even if I cannot fix it in the office, we would give the patient a hearing aid temporarily until we fix theirs. Like no one would leave without hearing, because like they lose awareness. There's an increased risk of falling. There's, just overall irritability. Going from hearing to not hearing can feel like this for a lot of people. Like I take my glasses off and all of a sudden I feel like I'm blind. Going from hearing to not hearing can be very frustrating. So I would say most providers, they will give someone a temporary solution. If they're out of warranty, so let's say it's year 4, then from there's going to be just about always there's going to be an out-of-pocket expense unless the person's eligible through insurance, again, to have them. If you lose them, so this is a huge one, especially for any assisted living, independent living, any communities. If someone loses a hearing aid, remember that those hearing aids, part of their warranty covers some loss and damage. There's usually a deductible. It could be $300 to $500, depending. Sometimes Medicaid will cover them, sometimes they won't, and there's a little more, but it does not mean if it's within that 3 year, within its warranty period, I should say, there's coverage. It doesn't mean I need to go out and buy a whole new hearing aid. So yeah, so there's usually coverage. I do see a question. I'm seeing the questions come in. Diane asked, how does tinnitus figure into this? So Diane, just to answer, tinnitus, you'll hear tinnitus or tinnitus. They're both accepted pronunciations by the Tinnitus Association. Just depends on who you ask. The people that have ringing in their ears, which is the tinnitus, is very common with sensory neural hearing loss. 85% of people that have a nerve loss start to develop this ring. So how it figures is just that there's a correlation between the two. Most people that are hearing those signs, it's a good sign to have a hearing evaluation because there is a very high likelihood that there is some nerve loss. Just about always, I would say in my experience, once the person, depending on how soon they're catching this, once they are hearing what they've otherwise been missing, the ringing almost always goes away. Unless it is severe, unless its ringing's been there for years, or there's a medical component where all of a sudden there's a loud roaring sound in their ear, that's where we go back to ear, nose, and throat, and your provider will refer you over to them, because then there could be signs of, something attacking the nerve, Meniere's disease, all sorts of things that can happen. That would be a medical concern. People that have hearing loss and just ringing that's gradually become more, from intermittent to constant, the beginning of the conversation will be what we need to address the biggest issue, which is you're not hearing. Your brain is abstaining from all these other sounds that are there because you have an inability to get that stimulus to the brain because that auditory nerve is decaying because of the aging process. The moment, or whatever it is that happened, the moment that person is properly fit with a prescription hearing aid, the brain is going to be stimulated and busy processing all these other sounds, from a person talking to birds tweeting to, it could be something annoying like hearing the dishes, the water running, or some things are beautiful for some and annoying for others as they're sort of adjusting to better hearing. But just about always, the brain is now busy and it doesn't present the sound that you are hearing. There are times that people with ringing in their ears, even with hearing aids, they are still hearing it. And then there are tinnitus therapies and other therapies that we can try. But if they do not have hearing aids, or prescription hearing aids, I should say, then that would be the first line if there is a loss. So I hope that answered that. Liz, I see your hand up.
Hi. Yes, thank you for the workshop and presentation. So I know you kind of lightly went over this, but I was just curious, since you mentioned several different types of hearing aids, do you have like a recommendation for those individuals who kind of struggle to keep up with their belongings, or they tend to be forgetful at times? I know you spoke to, potentially having that covered, in some form or fashion, with, I guess, through insurance, but I can think of two people that I know personally that they've gotten hearing aids and then they've lost them within the first 3 months, and that deters them. So is there a actual type of hearing aid
I love this.
hearing aid that would be better in that situation, I
Yes.
guess?
Yes. And especially for our cognitive impaired population. So if you have someone that also has a diagnosis of dementia, whether it's early on or more severe, the recommendation is something like this. It's going to be hard to show because it's black, and let's see the contrast. So this is a custom made hearing aid. This that I showed you in a moment ago is the most common that people get, which are behind your ear. But if we have, or even if we have just dexterity issues, or we're forgetful, or we have that person that we're like, this is going to be a challenge to just get them on. What we do here is we make a mold, an impression of their ear canal, And this is custom made. It comes in other colors, but this is custom made to go all the way in. Think of when you go to a concert or you see your musicians with the full mold that's here.
Yeah.
That's something else that's called an in-ear monitor, but that device was molded to their ear and it stays in place. The hearing aid would be molded to them. And I say the joke, especially with something larger like this, that the person can go skydiving or do a cartwheel and that thing is staying in their ear because it was molded to them. So that is the peace of mind way. Everything that you will see with marketing with hearing aids are things like this because they fit a wide variety of hearing losses. They're very easy. There's a lot of cool technology in here that sometimes takes a while to get into the custom. But at the end of the day, you could have a top of the line hearing aid with AI and all the features, but if we lose it, it is worthless.
Right.
It's only good if it's in there. So yeah. And Find My Hearing Aid. Many manufacturers literally have just like Find My iPhone or Find My device, it'll track where you lost it. So that's something to ask for too, but custom is the number one. If it's custom made to you, it is very unlikely that it's gonna pop out of the ear.
That's great. Thank you so
Awesome
much.
question. Thank you. Thank you for being
So
here.
JC, oh, that was awesome question. So JC, if they lose it and they may have like Find My Phone, Find My Hearing Aid, so they won't have like an app, or it's yes, the telephone.
Yes.
Okay, they will receive an email or
So they aren't, unfortunately. So there is an app that you would have on your phone that you can hit a button that says locate my device. But if it is lost, there isn't that I'm aware of, there isn't any manufacturer that will kind of let you know, hey, you left your hearing aid behind. Also, the hearing aids don't actively have GPS like an Apple AirTag, let's say. How that pinging works is if you went to the salon and you took your hearing aids off and put them on the dresser because you were getting your hair done, and then you went to Publix, and then you went back home, when you realize, oh, I lost my hearing aid, you're going to hit Find My Hearing Aid. It doesn't actively know where the unit is. It's only going to tell you this is the last place that your phone and hearing aid were together. In this case, you would know I have to retrace my steps at the salon because that's the last place. It will ping on like Google Maps and say, this is where you last were together. But I want to be clear that the hearing aids don't have like an active GPS. Like if someone threw them in the garbage and then it went to the landfill, it would not know that it's in the landfill. If that makes
yes,
sense.
that answers my question. We can suggest that to Apple or the others.
Exactly. That'd be nice. The thing is that they're trying to put a lot of tech in such a small little thing. I am confident that that's the future. Because, but the race is in hearing aids and hearing aid manufacturers is how do I get the clearest thing in the world, but how do I make it really tiny? Because most people are looking for invisible and the most discreet thing. So when we start adding Bluetooth, which now hearing aids have, which are awesome, and all these and AI and all these other chips, they're really, really trying to cram it all in a little shell. And they're doing great. And I know it's a matter of time until, they do have an active GPS on there. Another huge thing tying to like features in a hearing aid is some of them will tell you or their loved one if the person fell, which is huge for our geriatric population. And there would be a notification there. Let's say mom or dad fell or, they have had vertigo or just, they don't feel confident getting up and down or they're prone to falls. The moment that the patient falls, the hearing aid detects, some of them can detect that there was a fall and they would immediately notify the family saying, we think this person has fallen because it can detect the speed at which, the hearing aid is hitting the person's falling and that movement looks like it's different than like dropping it on the floor than the movement that there would be when someone stumbles and falls. So it can identify it, and that could be a life-saving alert for someone.
Like what type of hearing aid and go in the water with? Can you clarify that for me?
There are some, but it's a different hearing aid. So some hearing aids are fully waterproof. It can go into a water aerobics class, but it's not. We still don't have a custom-made waterproof hearing aid. It would look like this, which is the behind the ear. Like this brand, this one that I have in my hands right now is fully waterproof. So you can, if you fell in the pool with the hearing aid on or jumped in and then realized or jumped in the shower, or you were going for a walk and Florida decided to do what Florida does and you get caught in a downpour, the hearing aid would survive those things. But not all models. So if that's a concern, or if we have someone that's really into water aerobics, then those are things to voice to your provider, because there's so many solutions. We would just narrow it down to the prescription and then the person's lifestyle.
And I have a question. Like, if they had their hearing aid customized, and then, with their dementia, they're declining a little bit, and can they do some adjustments for the hearing, so they can hear better if they are not hearing properly, if they have a decline?
Let me make sure that I understood. You were asking, as their cognition declines, is there a way to adjust? Is that what I'm understanding? Adjust the hearing aids for their decline?
Yes.
So yes and no, there's a degree. So audibility, which is our ability to hear, if their hearing loss is declining, we can increase the power to their new script. So let's say, God forbid, 2 years go by and Mr. Smith, all of a sudden his hearing loss was 10 decibels poor, meaning he needs more help. The same exact hearing aid can be reprogrammed to the new prescription in most cases. So it usually would not mean, oh, now you gotta buy a whole new thing. The reason I said maybe is, if, let's say, they have premium hearing aids, the clearest thing that money can buy under the sun, but their ability to effectively process speech is now 40%, and it used to be 70%. That means it doesn't matter how loud or clear the hearing aid is, the brain is no longer able to process and decode what it is that it's hearing. And then we need to look at other solutions, like a microphone system that would amplify. So meaning you would give their spouse a microphone, everything they're saying goes right into their ear through the hearing aid, bypassing all of the external sound. So that's a tool that we can use. Or there is such thing as, then we have to say, hey, hearing aids are no longer going to work here, and we need to consider a cochlear implant, which is a surgical procedure that's outside of my scope, but that would be a surgical procedure that can try to help improve their quality of life and hearing. It does sever the auditory nerve. It is a little bit more involved than hearing aids, and the person has to be, I'd say, healthy enough to go through this, because there is a big rehabilitation with learning speech as well. But it can give someone a quality of life improvement, where otherwise, at that point, they would have deafness. They would be facing no longer truly understanding, and it's amazing for, especially if, God forbid, young adults or children have sudden hearing loss or are born deaf. Now there are solutions to where they can have a relatively normal hearing experience, compared to living a life, signing or within the deaf community, which is a different, just a different way of experiencing life. And yeah, that would be it. I see Diane has a question.
Yes, this is Diane. I have two questions. One, can you speak a little bit more about what today's hearing aids can do that yesterday's couldn't?
Yes.
And that makes them more desirable. And two, for me personally, I've got very small ear canals and a lot of earwax. How does that impact hearing aids and what I could or could not wear?
I love it. So regarding the hearing aids, the biggest thing is, I'd say, quality of life improvements they're rechargeable now, which was a big frustration for a lot of people. So these that I'm showing have a built-in battery that will last, this will last 51 hours. So for this one, it's going to last you all day. You don't have to worry about going to the store, changing this thing. Bluetooth, which is now, so many people are used to AirPods, but they're like your earbuds. You're going to hear your phone calls, hear your music, your audiobooks, your podcast with your prescription in your ear. Something as simple as that might seem like, well, I don't really care about that. I just want to hear. But we all are consuming so much content on our phones right now. I would say a majority of people, unfortunately, fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And it makes it just an everyday life device that it's well, now I can hear, I can hear this content and enjoy it with my hearing aids. it sort of normalizes it, where back then you couldn't do that. You know, if you were going to be on the phone, you had to put it on speakerphone and it had to be loud and the whole room would hear it. There's no need for that anymore because it's in your ear with your prescription. Those are all conveniences, but I'd say the biggest thing today that I'm excited about is AI. Most manufacturers now have an AI chip in their hearing aids. What the difference is it is so much better able to identify this is a loud cafeteria, this is a restaurant. It can detect your environment and much more aggressively reduce the background noise to give the speech in front of you more power. One thing that we do in a test that I didn't really talk about here is there is a measurement that tells us how much support does that person need in noise. It's called this SNR score. Once we know that score, we know this is how much I need to reduce the noise for them to do well. With AI, we can reduce more noise, so there are better chances that the person being able to go to, Cheesecake Factory and the birthday or the cruise ship, let's say, with the music in the background and enjoying it. So even, I'd say 4 years ago, we didn't have this. The leaps are significant and technology is just moving so fast and they're smaller. So it's really checking like every box that that there have been objections for in the past. They don't squeal also, which they used to squeal. How many people have known someone that, you'd walk by them and their hearing aid was squealing and it was an annoyance? That doesn't really happen anymore. So yeah, there's a lot. So it's like a loaded answer, but this is the most exciting time that there is to consider hearing aids because they're so convenient, where they really weren't that before. And they've had a bad rap. A lot of people know people that have had a hearing aid and they're like, that stuff didn't work. What I will advise everyone here on is avoid over the counter unless the loss is very, very mild and the budget does not allow to get a prescription device. Over the counter can give amplification. We did a podcast about over the counter hearing aids with the Healthy Aging podcast with Robin. There are conveniences. They can make things louder. They can be much more affordable. But if the person has a significant hearing loss, a prescription hearing device is what will help. Unfortunately, there's so many things online and like on TV of like, $100 this and a $200 that. All those little amplifiers they don't cut it. They're going to be larger, bulky. They will squeal. You're going to put them in and just hear loudness. There are better over-the-counter devices now that you can adjust on your phone if you're tech savvy, and those are getting better and better, but it still does not replace a prescription device. So Apple has an over-the-counter device, and those things can give amplification. It's just like I'm mentioning here, it can be louder. If you put them on and go through a screening, it's going to give you some loudness, but I would say this is like training wheels before we ride, let's say, on that bike, before we go and get the real thing, which is a prescription hearing aid. But if there are countries or areas that the person does not have access to someone like me, which happens, my background's from Dominican Republic, and in my country, there's really just like in the capital, which is Santo Domingo, this is almost like one of the few places that you can get a hearing aid. Everywhere else, it is very difficult. If I had grandma or grandpa there that had hearing loss and they could not get to a provider, an Apple AirPod that gives them amplification would be awesome because then they're going to hear better than without. But if you have access to hearing healthcare in the United States, especially in Florida, there's a lot of providers, so it'd be very easy to find somebody. Just for Diane, the last thing she also mentioned small ear canals. So for anyone that has smaller ear canals, going back to custom made. So this is an example of a custom. There, if the one size fits all does not fit, which happens all the time, then that would be an opportunity for someone to custom make an ear mold for the ear. Even for something like AirPods, like if we're not even talking about hearing aids, there are companies that you can come into someone like me, get an ear mold impression, and they can make a mold for your AirPod that would fit your ear, because sometimes those things are big. We had a patient that came in and that he bought the AirPods and then he returned them because of that reason. He was like, this thing doesn't fit, it's not comfortable, and then he graduated to prescription devices.
So let me ask you another question. Sometimes a person with dementia, they develop hearing loss. Are they able to do accurately a customized device for them? Because sometimes they have aphasia, they cannot express themselves to see, okay, this is the right fit, or I hear well. What is the line, where you will say, we will not be able to do that, unfortunately. What do you do? What can we do?
The most difficult, like the conversation that I have with the family is, will they be able to put it in? Because it's easy to put the custom hearing aid in your ear. Even if the person can't express that they're doing better or poorer, we can objectively, to a degree, there's equipment that we can put a microphone in their ear and then the hearing aid. It's called real ear measurement. We do this for all of our patients here. And on the computer, we can see this is her loss. The hearing aid is amplifying what it needs to, so we can validate that the prescription is met. It's still up to the person's subjective experience to say, I like this, I don't like this, this is too loud, this is too soft. And we can make the adjustments if they are able to express that. But at the very least, we would know, and we can see it, even if they're not coherent enough to have a full conversation, which sometimes, we do see. We can at least see that they are alert, that they're answering, can you hear me? And going from, and I'm thinking of a patient that I recently saw that has a significant cognitive decline. In that person's example, it's very difficult to have a conversation, but you can see night and day the moment that it goes in. I don't have to project. I call her name. She does look my way. So those are those are little validations of this thing is helping. But the biggest thing is, can they put it in? Can they get it inserted? In some cases, if the staff can do it, awesome. Not every facility has enough people, or wherever, whatever. And that's the logistics around how do we get this in mom or dad's ear. I would say is the biggest conversation of, is it worth it or not? Because again, I don't want anyone, even if it's free with insurance or anything, like, it's pointless if you're getting a thing and then we're not effectively able to wear them. It's not helping them hear. It's not helping their brain with stimulation. It's just sitting in a drawer. And we never, ever want that. So that would be my pass or fail, I would say. And when it comes to the hearing evaluation also, it's very simple in the beginning. Most of the hearing evaluation is you're hearing a beep and pushing a button. And I would say most people can do that. If in the test we notice we can't do that part of it, then we just can't advance. At that point, no provider should recommend hearing aids, because if that's not effective, the rest of it won't be either. So, and we can't guess at it. It has to be prescribed, and to have a legitimate prescription, we need to be able to do the full hearing evaluation.
And when it's customized, you mentioned that they can adjust the volume. Okay, so if it's very tiny, how do they do that? Do they have like a remote, equipment to adjust that? So how do they do that?
If it's the little tiny ones, like I showed Diane, like those
Yes.
invisible ones, some of those have an app that you can do some basic adjustments, or they sell like a little remote control. It's like a keychain, tiny little thing that has a plus and minus, and you can do some very simple adjustments. Because if they're that tiny and visible deep in the canal, they don't have a Bluetooth antenna in those because they're so small. So that would be like a trade-off, but there's still some adjustments you can make.
I understand there's a group at a senior center in Alabama tuning in, which is awesome. Thank you.
Awesome.
They want to know if tinnitus is related to hearing loss.
So it's related. The tinnitus or tinnitus, it won't cause the hearing loss, but the correlation is that, so we spoke about it a little bit earlier, that 85% of people with ringing in their ears, it's because there is a nerve loss. There is a sensory neural component, whether aging, whether noise induced, but that would be a sign, and that would be the reason to have a hearing evaluation. If it's that, and the world is not as clear, go get a hearing evaluation, because hearing aids can absolutely help with that if hearing aids are needed. There are people that have ringing in their ears and do not have hearing loss. So it's not to say all, but a majority do. So I will say I myself am one of those people. There are times that I do get ringing in the ears, and at night I have to listen to white noise. I was born and raised in New York City, which was very noisy. And when I moved to Florida, and it was very quiet, and just being in a room with central air conditioning and not the train tracks outside or the big window unit that produced sound, that silence was deafening for me. It was very uncomfortable. And I started to notice that it had some ring, and I have normal hearing, and it happens here and there. So I sleep with a little white noise machine. There is nothing that we can do, unfortunately. There is no cure for tinnitus. There is no magic pill. There is no procedure.
Can you give us some tips of how to clean our ears? Because we have been
Ooh.
doing the wrong thing for the longest time.
No Q-tips. I will say it now. I will say it all the time. No Q-tips. So the ear should clean itself. The normal migration of wax is we should all, as I'm talking to you guys right now, it sounds yucky, but there is wax, there's oil, there's hairs, not up here, but in there, that are migrating out of the canal. That is the natural process and skin migration of our ear canal. You know, if there are allergies and things that can lead to a little bit more wax production, but no one should really have to clean their ears. Q-tips do not belong in ears. It actually says it on the packaging. If you read it, it says do not put it in your ear. It's a misconception that's happened. If you have a wet ear because you came out of the shower and water was there, clean it with a little tissue like this, just on the outside of your ear. That's it. That's as far as we should go. The ear, nose, and throat joke is nothing smaller than your elbow goes in your ears, and that is the advice that I would have for you guys. If there is a very waxy person, some people are powerhouses for wax, and it's just their anatomy. It's not even a hygiene thing, and it's just the body's producing a lot. There are wax removal drops that you can try, but I would still, to be safe and generalized for all, is just have your doctor look in your ear, and if he recommends a flush or drops, then we'll do that. Some people do need that, but I would say a majority of people don't. And a lot of people put Q-tips in their ears, and we see a lot of perforated eardrums, bruised ear canals. Also, if you're in there with a Q-tip, you are telling your hearing system someone is attacking, and the hearing system is saying, even if you're not hitting the drum, it's saying, uh-oh, we need to protect the ear. And what happens? We're producing more wax. It's so counterproductive, because then you're just going to be migrating more wax and oil out of your ear, which feels like an endless cycle, and it's because it is. So be safe. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here with me. And this has been fun. I love all the questions and the interaction. My company's Altamont Family Hearing. If you are in Central Florida, we'd be happy to help you hear your very best.
Thank you, Jesse. I wanted to share also with them additional, resources. You have here in Florida, the Florida Coordinating Council for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, the FCCDH. You also have the Association of Late Deafness Adults, ALDA. We want to also thank Jesse. Thank you so much for helping us. So to close that, can you give us additional tips that how can we take care of our ears, our hearing, so to prevent the decline in the future, to prevent us to go to you in the future? I don't know if I'm doing well because I'm saying to my kids, please do not put the music too loud or near those headsets with that. I don't know if it's real or not. What can you say to us so we can tell our kids?
Noise protection is the biggest thing. What you said right now with the headphones, being aware of how loud, being mindful of how loud those headphones are. There's that can be a whole other subject, and getting into headphones in the youth and what that's going to do to the ears as we age. And I'm part of that. So, because I listen to headphones, and when I go to the gym and those things, then it can be tempting to I want to turn this up and feel the music. Your ears don't need to feel it that much. We don't need it at 100% to experience that music. And if the protection is the biggest thing, if you're going to be in noise, if you're going to book that Mark Anthony concert or whoever, Pitbull, whoever you like, you're going to see Metallica and you're going to be next to the speaker. Don't book next to the speaker, but take ear protection. Like even the foam things at Home Depot that people wear for construction, that's awesome. Squish it, put it in your ears, have some sort of dampening system. Musicians, just about, I would say a majority of musicians do get custom in-ear monitors. Professional musicians, if it's a hobby, then consider, if you're playing in a band and you're doing that frequently, noise protection. There are musician ear molds that can be custom made for their ear that lets them hear their music but not hear the damaging high frequencies that some of the instrumentation and the amps can do, but noise protection is the biggest thing. And early intervention. If your family's giving you signs that something's going on, being stubborn really only, I'd say it affects you. It doesn't affect, well, it can affect them socially and that relationship, but at the end of the day, they're trying to give you a heads up. And so listen to that advice if someone's shining the light on you, because you will not notice it. And if they're wrong, then you're going to show them an audiogram that says you're normal and say, I'm fine. I was just not paying attention. Or I was playing my video game or watching a movie and I was not paying attention. It's not that I had the inability to hear you, but do the test and have that proof. I would say more often than not, if someone's saying, hey, let's get a hearing test, that's a very uncomfortable conversation to have. So if someone's having it with you, it's because they're concerned. And if they're concerned, listen to them. That's someone that loves you, that wants you to better your health. And we unfortunately see that so often. We're doing a video on social media. If you guys are on social media, I go by the bald hearing guy, and I have a lot of fun content. I'm trying to make audiology and hearing aids and things that we experience in the practice kind of shine a light on it, just a little more humorous, a little less serious, and just really, if you're into social media, follow a bald hearing guy. But one of the things that we're talking about in the video that's going to be coming out is, men that are a little bit stubborn, that their spouse forces them to come in and they don't want help. And this goes with everything that I'm saying right now. Someone is wanting you to better yourself. Listen to that advice. It's coming from someone that loves you. So
Thank you so much, JC. And again, thank you everyone for your question, for participating. We are trying to bring to you workshops every month. Just check our website, adrccares.org. And we're here for the community. We're here for you. Thank you again, JC, and see you next time.